Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of You, Me, and Ennui. All this season, we're talking about things related to your career. So, what better to talk about when you're talking about your career than questions for HR? Because we all have them, right? So, I'm really excited to have our guest here with us today, Jha'nee Carter. Jha'nee Carter is widely recognized as the HR queen. She's a distinguished influencer who inspires courage in professionals to confront and resolve workplace challenges with authenticity and wisdom. Known for her straightforward approach, Jha'nee addresses the complex challenges often overlooked in the workplace. Her mission is to do more than just start conversations. She equips individuals with practical, actionable strategies to identify, overcome, and prevent workplace trauma. As a skilled communicator, she enlightens and empowers her audience, offering them the tools needed to foster a healthier, more equitable professional environment. Welcome, Jha'nee.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk about such a hot topic.
Yes, I mean, even I'll share a little behind the scenes for our listeners. We were just chatting, the three of us, with another team member about how it's really just inevitable that you're going to have questions, especially as you're on the onset of your career, maybe right at the beginning, and you really don't know who to ask, and you might not even feel empowered to ask those questions, which is why we were so happy to come across your work, Jha'nee, because it just sounds like you are just going out there and addressing the topics that a lot of people might be too shy or not, again, not feel empowered to ask questions about.
Exactly.
So we're really excited to have you.
Excited to be here.
Right. So, well, first I have to ask, what first drew you to the topic of the ins and outs of workplace policies?
Well, navigating workplace policies is complex, right? We all know that. And believe it or not, I started working at 16 and wrapped up my official corporate career in 2021. But through those years, I saw firsthand how policies evolve, right? And how they impact the workers, us daily. And the real turning point for me came during the pandemic, right? Which brought unprecedented challenges and decisions that businesses had to navigate, and we had to navigate them very quickly, in real time. And so I was deeply involved in reviewing controversial policies around health and safety measures, which really
Mm,
opened my eyes to how essential, thoughtful, and more importantly, inclusive policies are for everyone in the company. And especially when I suggested, changes to make policies more inclusive, I was met with resistance. And so I realized the power and the necessity of having a voice in these discussions. That's when I truly understood my role in HR wasn't just about enforcing rules, but about advocating for the fair and effective policies that both respect and protect our employees. And so now that I'm retired from the corporate grind, I am beyond passionate about sharing what I've learned and helping others navigate their careers through these complicated yet crucial areas. So I'm ready to, get into this and unpack this together.
I love it. I'm just curious, what you just shared prompted two questions for me. One is, I mean, can you think of an example that maybe you're allowed to share of a workplace policy that you got maybe some pushback on that you hadn't expected?
I had colleagues that had medical conditions that they were apprehensive to get the shot at first. And
Okay.
with it being in real time, we were putting out a policy that said, well, you can't come back to work unless you get it. And so that was, whoo, fires went off because we have people that take care of their parents, that have responsibilities and things, people to take care of. So without that job, what are they going to do? And
Right.
so that was really the moment where I decided that, it's important to explain why we're doing these policies, but also, again, be fair and understand the other perspective and not just the HR leadership role. That makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And then I always like to ask, what was your first, you said you started at 16. What was your first job at 16?
My first job was office management. I was managing law firms, and it was big law firm. Well, not at 16. I started in a solo practitioner and then went on when I graduated college to big law. And so you're
Okay.
managing law firms throughout the country and some internationally. And I was on the West Coast. HR was on the East Coast. When things were heating up on the West Coast, HR was gone. So that's when I decided as an office manager, I really need to get into HR and figure out what's going on, how I can help my people, my staff in real
Yeah.
time without having to wait,
And I was about to feel like such a, you said an office corporate job, and I thought, my first job at 16 was a lifeguard, but to each their own journey.
I started heavy early.
Yeah,
That's why I'm tired.
I
Okay.
I commend. Yeah, exactly. That's why you're retired. I love it. I feel like I have a glimpse of the answer to this since you've mentioned the pandemic a few times, but why did you decide to start a TikTok account to share your expertise?
So my daughter, my Gen Zer, when
Oh,
this was happening, everyone was at home. We were on Zoom, so she was hearing what was going on. And the way that management did not want to hear what I had to say, the way they were being dismissive, she turns to me after everyone was off the call, of course, and says, "Are you really going to let them treat you like that?" And it was that moment that I said, I teach my daughter to stand up for herself. I
mm.
was like, I'm done with this. And she had been trying to get me on TikTok for about a year before that. And I said, I didn't have anything to talk about. I'm not dancing, you know?
I was
And
just gonna
then
say, yep.
once I left, I just started talking about some of the troubles that I was having, the things that I experienced, and it took off from there. I now have more followers than her, which is kind of cool, right? But she's the one
That
that
must be
pushed
fun
me.
between the two of you.
It is. She's the one that pushed me. She's like, "Mom, you have something to say, and so many people can help from this." And so that's what started it.
That's so beautiful. Kudos to your daughter.
I love her. Yes.
Well, I've loved hearing about your experience and about your daughter, but I think we also want to dive into the questions that we know our listeners probably have. So this is the meat of why I'm really
Yes.
excited to have you here. So we can start with this question. What would you say are some things people might forget to ask in a job interview to understand if the job is the right fit for them, especially if they're at the beginning of their career, when they might want to project more capability than maybe they might already have?
So one thing is when you're starting out in your career, I want you to relax. I tell people this all the time. Please relax. If it doesn't work out, it wasn't meant to work out. But I know it's exhilarating, right? You have this interview, you got the call back, they liked your resume, and so hey, this is exciting. But sometimes you have to step back, and not sometimes, I want you to step back and really dig a bit deeper into these interviews, research the company. Make sure you're asking about the company culture. What kind of professional development opportunities are there? These are crucial things that you want to know out the gate and not when you get in there a month later, right? Ask what a typical career path looks for someone in their position, right? And these things kind of help you see beyond just what's in the job description. And they help you evaluate if the company culture and the environment is a right fit for you. No one wants to go into work stressed out every day.
No.
It doesn't produce a great product. And so these are the things you really need to understand. Is this right for me?
Mhm.
Take that confidence and say, I can do the job, but will this be the right fit for me to do that?
I love that. Ask about professional development opportunities, general company culture. I think those are great. Another question is, I'll say this, usually when HR is involved in the workplace, that signals that something bad is happening. That's usually the vibe. But what do you think young professionals most need to understand about the positive role HR can play in their career?
So I think this is one of the good things about social media because yeah, HR always gets the bad rap. Okay. And let me say this, there are a lot of HR departments professionals that aren't approachable, right? When they walk in, you are scared. They are delivering the bad news, but HR is also there for career development, offering training opportunities. These are the things that I loved to do when I was in, my HR corporate role, the learning and development, helping people solve conflicts, but also giving them tools and strategies to do, going forward, how they're always going to be conflicts in the workplace. Hopefully it
Mhm.
doesn't get too bad, but HR is there to help you solve these. If you ask the right questions, if you go, don't be scared. There's no need to be scared of HR. Ask about those learning opportunities and the professional development. That's key.
That, yeah, that I feel like that might be such an untapped resource that our listeners might, or most
People
people
don't even think
might not know about.
HR is thinking about career development most of the
Right.
time. You're thinking, oh, I'm
No.
fired, or things
Right.
like that.
I'm being
But
put on a pip. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. But human resources, I say we're there to give human resources to succeed. That's what
Hmm.
I'm here to do. That's what I want to give. As HR professionals should be giving you skills that will transfer over when you leave, if you leave.
Bouncing back a bit to application for a job interview, especially on the onset. How can a potential new hire successfully negotiate a salary without sounding ungrateful for the initial offer? Is this fear of being perceived as difficult unfounded, or is there some truth to that?
There's a little truth. Well, when you receive an offer, of course, it's a thank you, even if the offer is ridiculously low. And we've all been
Mhm,
there, right? It's a business. And a lot of people, I want them to think that it's a business. So if the leadership team can get you in for lower, then, it looks good on the books. That's the
mhm,
truth behind it. But negotiate. You have to negotiate. You have to see what your experience. Go on websites like Payscale. You can type in your information,
mhm,
your experience, even if you don't have that much, and it'll give you about a budget where you fit in that scale. And don't be afraid to bring it up. I would not accept an offer on the first as soon as you get it. I need to process this. I need to look this over, and do not be scared to say that because
mhm.
you should process it. You should look through the whole offer, put that excitement to the side, thank you, but I need to look this over. And then that's when you start the negotiations.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just curious because sometimes, you're speaking with a potential employer and the salary is the salary. They really have, to your knowledge, offered you as much as they can offer. Are there ways to be creative in asking for other things? I mean, I've heard this, I've never applied it in practice, I'll admit, but some people say, oh, you can negotiate more PTO or you can
Again,
negotiate flexible hours. Is
more
that a
PTO.
realistic?
Yes, it is. A flexible schedule is something that you can definitely negotiate. Now with the hybrid, well, some are hybrid, some are remote. Maybe, hey, can I be home? Can I work from home Tuesday and Thursday? These are things
Mhm.
that will make me more productive, and say why. It's not just, hey, I want to be at home or I need
Right.
this. What's the why? And many times our goal is for you to be productive. So, however you are productive, the most productive, I'm willing to let you do it. Now, am I going to go let you work at a mall or anything like that during the day, depending on the job? But
Mhm.
no, there's all sorts of issues that go into that. But don't be scared to ask for what you need. Flexible schedule is important, very important to me, especially for mental health.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, other people who are navigating childcare as well. I know that the flexible schedule really helps.
Yeah, can I
Um,
come in, or even well,
yeah,
one more thing before we move on.
sure.
Because I had my daughter right out of college. So to me, coming in a little bit earlier, they wanted me to start at 9. Hey, can I start at 8? That works for me, and leave at
Uh,
4, things like that. Don't be scared to
right.
ask because it fits
Mm,
into your schedule. And so that way I'm not under all this anxiety and pressure trying to rush to get my kid, right?
right. To
So
pick up.
please voice your concerns, what you need.
That's really helpful. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, here's the other side of it. Um, because I feel like this is a very hot topic right now. But even when you're at a good place in your job, what are things, maybe like three things you can do to prepare yourself in the event of layoffs? Because they're happening more often, or at least I feel like I hear about them all the time. Are there some signs to look out for at your company?
There are layoffs are happening more often. I mean, they're happening all the time, like you said, they're in the news, they're on social media. I believe I am a huge advocate of job hopping. And now when I say job hopping, I'm not meaning like every 3 months, every 6 months. So don't be scared to have your resume updated. Be prepared for if that layoff does happen or if I want to move. So your resume should always be updated. I don't care if there aren't any signs that people are jumping ship. Um, when you start see when you start seeing leadership leaving, maybe leaders that have been there for some time.
Mm.
You'll see stuff in the news, social media, pay attention to that. Some people will get into the mindset that, oh no, I'm okay. They like me here. Don't get comfortable. Never get complacent. Always have your resume ready. Um, if you feel a layoff is going to happen, call a temp agency. Temping is something that does not get talked about enough. You know, be proactive. And it's okay if you get laid off. You know, I want people to know that it is okay. I know it's horrible, but it's okay and you'll be okay and you'll just move on. Sharpen the resume, networking too. I didn't say that. You need to be networking. You need to be networking before, while you're there, speaking to people, making these relationships. So if that does happen, you have something to fall back on. Someone might say, hey, you know what? You would be great over here. Or I have
Mm.
somebody I know that is looking for somebody. So networking, keeping your resume updating, if leadership is walking away, if you're seeing stuff in the news, just mentally prepare yourself that I may be going.
I love that, especially keeping your resume up to date and networking. We had a whole episode about networking that'll be part of the season as well.
Season,
So I
that's
look
great.
forward to your feedback on it. I'm a big proponent for networking, so
You
you're
have
really
to.
speaking my language.
You have to.
So, unfortunately, you've done everything you can do to prepare for a layoff, but eventually it happens. You get laid off. What would be your biggest advice for someone who just got laid off from their job?
Take a breath. In the moment when you're getting laid off, please don't become too emotional. I know it is an emotional moment, but hold your emotions in, at least until you get home or in the car. Don't sign anything right away. Read over any material that is given to you. Take a breath. File for unemployment if you are getting, if there's any severance involved. People don't talk about this, and this is something I really wanted to highlight on here. When you're laid
Yeah.
off, usually sometimes you're given a severance. If your severance is given in a lump sum, you can then file for unemployment. It takes weeks to get unemployment, so you file right away. Now, the reason I
Mm.
say lump sum, because if it's broken up into payments, unemployment will say, oh no, you're still receiving income.
You're making an income.
Right.
Okay.
But if it's given to
Interesting.
you in a lump sum, which it usually is, then I want you to file for unemployment on day 3 because you're going to have to wait a few weeks. So at least once you've processed the information, you know that you'll soon have some money coming in, right?
Mhm.
And then it's time to get started. Don't be scared to go temp. Temping can turn into permanent positions, and it's something I did and found a wonderful firm doing it. I temped for a manager for 6 months and then ended up working there for 10 years. So it was a wonderful thing. Um, Sit in it, don't get too emotional, take a breath, you will be okay. Life
Yeah.
moves on.
Now, I speak from the experience. I've personally never been laid off before. So I was curious that you mentioned signing paperwork and looking, what are things to look out for? Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
So what are some things to look out for?
So typically you're given a severance agreement. And so you want to see, how are they going to extend my business benefits? Some people you can negotiate during the layoff. Don't think that you can't.
Okay, so
Will
that I
you
didn't think you could do.
Yes, you
Interesting.
can. Yes, you can. That's another misconception. You can definitely negotiate your severance package. And I say package because the package involves pay, it involves benefits. A thing to look out for, usually they will present COBRA. COBRA premiums are out of this world, so maybe you want to negotiate, hey, can you give me another month or two? That is something that can be done.
Yeah, you read my mind
Um,
about health insurance. That's the first thing I can hear my parents asking, what about your insurance?
Exactly. So you need to look at things like that. And again,
Right.
you can negotiate that if you need to. I know somebody, the Paramount layoffs that happened recently.
Mhm.
A client of mine had a surgery coming up, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have any more insurance." So we negotiated it, and they gave it to her. She'd been there 20 plus years. They gave it to her without a problem. They extended the
Oh,
benefits. So things like that.
wow.
Yeah, don't be scared to speak up and go through it line by line.
I'm learning so much just in this conversation. So I'm really enjoying this. So you mentioned, I love this advocacy for temping, because my next question is how can people use a time of employment to set themselves up for their next career?
There's so many opportunities. You could start taking classes now. I mean, there's YouTube University, of course. There's all sorts of great content and trainings on LinkedIn. You can go get certified. You know, Google has certification classes. Allison.com has certification classes that you can do at your leisure. There's so much information out there. Try to figure out what you want to do. Maybe you want to transition careers, start learning a little bit about that. Again, our networking, right? Get out there and
Mhm.
start talking to people. Yeah, that's big. Get out there, start talking to people, the networking, take certifications, and take the time to really refresh, you
I
know?
was gonna say, I love all of like the practical skill building advice that you're giving. But I'm glad that you touched on the more like human element of
It's
taking some
tough.
time for you during unemployment.
And know that if you don't get and the job market is insane right now, we can say that, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you look up an application on LinkedIn and it's you just saw it and now there's 400 applicants. Don't let that don't let that get your spirit down too much. You know, you have to just keep going and what's right for you will come your way. And it may take a little longer, and that's okay. And another thing before we end this topic, I wanted to stress to people when you are laid off or when you leave a job that you've been at for so long and it's been your routine every day, it takes a moment to really get into the new groove of things. And that's
Mhm.
okay. You know, there are some days where you might cry yourself to sleep, you know, that's
Mhm.
okay. There are
Mhm.
some days where you're going to feel like not getting up out of bed. That's okay, but you're going to have to get up. So, really become self aware, understand that it's a lot of us going through this, it's a part of life, and you will find what's right for you. That's the human element. And people get mad at me. I sorry. People get mad at me when I say that because I made a post about rejection sometimes is a wonderful thing. And I heard so
Right.
much, you know, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't the right time for them. You know,
Mhm.
it'll go over your head if you're not in it. When I left my job, I was feeling it's 2 years now, and I'm finally getting over it and getting back to
Mhm.
myself because that was
Wow.
my identity for so long, you know, getting up, getting dressed, getting in the car, speaking to everyone. So it's okay. It'll pass. Take a
Yeah.
breath, you know.
Our past season was about relationships. So what you're saying about like rejection, like I always heard from friends, like rejection is protection. And like that's really hard to hear when you like
It
really like
is
the
when you're in
person.
it.
And it's the same as your career. You really liked your career.
It did. And it was
Yeah.
really hard for me, my last, excuse me, when I had to leave because I finally found a company that I fit. You know, I
Mm,
loved the culture. I
yeah.
loved going to work. But then there was things that didn't fit morally. And so I had to go. I was
Yeah.
devastated. I got over it. I'm smiling now.
Well, thank you for sharing that experience with us, and all of this great advice. I feel like I could talk to you all day,
Yeah.
but I guess I have to ask the question that we ask all of our guests because the name of the podcast is You, Me, and Ennui. So, we talk about ennui as this feeling of feeling stuck, maybe a little bit bored, or at least just like blasé, unsure. Is there anything giving you a sense of ennui right now?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Life isn't without challenges. And so right now, I haven't really been present as much on my social media channels, people may notice, because of my busy schedule. My son, who is nonverbal and he's on the spectrum.
Mm,
So it requires a lot for me as far as being therapies, you know, emotionally, time wise. But so balancing that content creation, running a business, it can be overwhelming. And there are days where I'm like, you know, I just want to get up and focus on my child. But I know that these hardships are temporary, right? And I'm finding my pace. And
mhm,
so crafting a routine that works for me is not just physically, but also, you know, time wise and mentally is helping. And so you're gonna feel stuck, you know, it
mhm.
comes, it goes, but I just know that it'll pass. I have so much going on. We're like
Yeah.
juggling chainsaws, but it'll be okay.
Right.
It'll be
That's
okay.
quite the visual. Oh, thank you for sharing so vulnerably about your family as well. And it sounds like you were stuck, but you're on your way to getting unstuck. So
Yes,
that's
I see the
really
light at the
great
end
to
of the
hear.
tunnel.
Oh,
Yes,
that's beautiful.
yes.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I love hearing more about your family, your daughter, your son. Is there anything else that you're working on right now that you'd like to talk about or share with our listeners?
Well, speaking of podcasts, I've taken some time off to really study podcasting and things like that. And so look out for me. I want to start a podcast. I want to expand my presence on YouTube. So look out for some new type of content also coming your way. I'm excited about a lot of things I have going on now that I'm starting to feel unstuck. So look out, please. Follow me at underscore the HR queen on all social media outlets.
Congratulations.
Thank
Undertaking a
you.
podcast is no small endeavor. So I
Uh,
really, I, I'm rooting for you. That's great. And we'll be sure to link in our show notes to all the places that people can find you. And
Perfect.
then, yes, please let us know whenever your podcast launches. We will be
Thank
so
you.
excited to
Thank you.
hear it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jha'nee.